Hey, Michaela. So here is the first problem that you got incorrect on um, the lesson number 119. Okay, so let me get my pen here. So here's what I see. I see that you did the math correctly. You forgot to reduce. So -2 divided by 2 is -1. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. If you had divided these by 2 and reduced the fraction to a whole number, you would have gotten that one marked correct. So just go back and reduce that fraction entirely, okay? Because remember, we can separate these and say -2 over 2 plus or minus 4 times square root of 3 over 2. So we can divide this by 2 to get -1 plus or minus 4 divided by 2 is 2 times the square root of 3. So remember to look at those whenever you have a complex fraction like that. Separate it out and see if you can reduce. And then you're going to be more likely to get the correct answer. You did the math perfectly right. You just forgot to reduce it. All right, let's look at the next problem. All right, so this is the next problem. Maureen deposited $19,000 at 11% interest compounded annually. What was the total interest in 8 years? So the amount in 8 years is going to equal $19,000 times the rate of 1.11 to the 8th power. That is the calculation that we use. And remember, we always do exponents before we do multiplication. So 1.11 to the 8th power times 19,000. That's going to equals $43,786 $43,786.22. But the question is not what is the total amount, it says what is the total interest. So we're going to subtract the original amount to find the interest. So minus $19,000, what we call the principal. The principal is the original amount that we deposited, right? So if I subtract $19,000 from that, I get $24,786.22. That is the answer that we are looking for. Okay? All right, let's look at the next problem. All right, the next problem is for consecutive odd integers. So we want 3 of them. So that's going to be n. The first one is n. The second one is n plus 2 because we're looking for odd integers. So we're going to skip the even number to get to the next odd number. And the third integer is going to be n plus 4 because we're skipping again, right? We're going to skip that third number to get to the fourth number, which is going to be our odd integer. So here are the expressions that represent the first, second, and third. Such that, here's our equation, -3 times the sum of the first and third. So first plus the third is 50 greater, so we're going to add 50, then 8 times the opposite of the second. Okay, -3 times the sum of the first and the third is 50 greater than 8 times the opposite of the second. So now I'm going to look over here at my expressions and drop those in. -3, right? The first is n plus the third is n plus 4 equals 50 plus 8 times the opposite of the second is n plus 2. All right, so I'm going to distribute n plus n, that's 2n. So 2n plus 4, right? Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6n. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. So I have 50 plus. So this is going to be a negative n and a negative 2. So I'm going to change that. Negative n minus 2. So 8 times negative n, that's going to be a negative 8n. And 8 times negative 2, that's a negative 16. So I'm going to combine 50 and negative 16. So I have negative 6n minus 12 equals 34 minus 8n. So now I'm going to add 8n to both sides. And I'm going to add 12 to both sides. This would cancel. This would cancel. Negative 6, positive 8, that's 2n. And 34 plus 12 is going to be 46. So when I divide both sides by 2, n is equal to 23. So if n is equal to 23, then n plus 2 is 25, and n plus 4 is 27. So those are the 3 odd integers we're looking for. Let's look at the next problem. Okay, so the next problem is going to be distribution and simplification. So we're going to say 4 times the square root of 2. Actually, let's just write it out. 4 times square root of 2 plus 2. And then we're going to have 2 times the square root of 2 times square root of 2 plus 2. All right, so this is going to equal 4 times the square root of 2 plus 4 times 2 is 8. And then 2 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is going to be 2 times 2. So that's going to be positive 4. And then 2 times the square root of 2 times 2 is going to be 4 times the square root of 2. So our solution is going to be 12, positive 12, and 8 times the square root of 2. But we have to put it in the right order. So it's going to be 12 plus 8 times the square root of 2, because the radical symbol or your radical term always comes after a whole number. Okay? All right, next problem. All right, so we want to graph the following inequalities. So the first one I have is y is greater than or equal to x. So if I look at that very closely, y is greater than or equal to x. This is my slope. That invisible 1 in front of my x is my slope. And we know we can turn any whole number into a fraction by putting it over 1. So my slope is 1 over 1, and it's positive. So it's going to go up to the right. I don't have a value over here for my b where it crosses the y-axis. So I'm going to say plus 0. That is my b term. When there's not 1 written there, you can use plus 0 because it does not change the value of the problem, and it also gives you a starting point for your y-axis. So it's going to start right here. And then it's going to go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, and so forth and so on, all the way through the graph. Now I've got some points marked out that follow the slope. So I'm going to look at my symbol, and it has an equal sign. So it includes the line. So the line is going to be a solid line. So I'm going to draw a straight solid line through all of these points because the line is part of the answer. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the second line. Y is greater than or equal to negative x plus 2. Again, there's no number, so that's the invisible 1. We turn it into a fraction by putting it over 1. So my slope is negative 1 over 1. So down 1 over 1. And we started the positive 2 on the y-axis. So I'm going to put my point there. I'm going to go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. And I'm going to continue to do that to make this line. And I'm going to go back in the same direction to find the line. So now I'm just going to connect all those dots. It's a lot easier to do when you have a lot of dots. And I look here, you see that has the or equal to sign, so that's why I drew a solid line. So when they have this line here, it reminds you to draw this line here, okay? Now I have to look at this symbol here. Greater than means above the line, okay? And less than means below the line. So these are both greater than, so they're going to be above both lines. So above this line would be this area and this area. Above this line would be this area and this area. The area that is true for both lines is the one that has the overlap, that has the 2 X's. It's true for the first line and it's true for the second line. So that is the one that we will shade in. So I'm going to use my highlighter and I'm going to make it yellow and I'm going to shade that part in. That would be the correct answer. Just like that. And it's okay if you leave the X's there, that's fine. That's just a tool that you use to help you find the right area. Okay, so that would be the answer to that problem. Let's look at the next one. Okay, we want to find the equation of the line that passes through this point, 1, 3, and is parallel to y equals negative x plus 8. So if it is parallel, that means that by definition means same slope as this line. So you just want to find the line that has the same slope as this that crosses through this point. So all we're going to do is we're going to rewrite this with the same slope, negative, it'd be -1, but it's invisible, right? And we're going to take away, this is what tells us where the line lives. Well, we don't want that line. We want the line that lives here. So we're going to take away its location and find the new one by substituting in the points. So I'm going to put in the y value of that point, and I'm going to put in the x value of that point. Then I'm going to complete the equation the way that we know how by adding 1 to both sides. So 4 is the value of b. So I can rewrite this knowing what b is now. So I'm just going to take this same equation and substitute in b. So 4 is equal to negative x plus 4. That goes here, and it's a positive 4, so we put a positive 4 here. That is the way you would find the equation of the line. Okay, you just rewrite it with the same slope and substitute in the point and solve for b, and then put b into the equation. All right, so this is the answer. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do this. That's the right answer. All right, let's look at the next problem. All right, this problem says to factor. So what I see here, we have 2x squared minus 5x minus 25. Okay, so what I see is I see a -5 and a -25. In order to factor this, I'm going to have to multiply. So I need to say 2 times a negative 25. So 2 times negative 25, that's the first and the last, that equals negative 50. So I need to find factors of negative 50, that's first times last, or third I should say, negative 50, that is going to equal negative 5, which is the middle term, or the second term, whenever you add them together. So for a negative, to get a negative 50, one needs to be positive, one needs to be negative. And I know that 50 is 5 times 10, and if I have the 10 negative times negative 10 times positive 5, that gives me a negative 50. But then if I have negative 10 plus 5, that gives me negative 5. So then that matches with that. So that's going to be how I factor this. 2x squared minus 10x plus 5x minus 25. We take these two factors and we put them in the middle to replace this one. If we add them together, we get the same thing. So we did not change the value of the problem. All we did was give ourselves an extra number to factor. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to factor this. So I can see 2x, and I know that 2 is a factor here, and there's another x. So I'm going to pull 2x, and I get x minus 5. Okay. Now I have 5x minus 25. I can pull 5 out of both. 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. So now I see I have x minus 5, x minus 5. So my final factoring is 2x plus 5 times x minus 5. This is your final solution. Okay, so we take the first number times the last number, and that gives us this number. And then we have to get the factors of negative 50 that equals the middle number. And that was negative 10 and positive 5. Okay, let's look at the next problem. Okay, so this is the last one. So the first thing we need to do is make this to where it's one fraction. So to do that, we need to get a common denominator. So I am going to use 3y as the common denominator here. So x over 1 times 3y over 3y plus 4x over 3y. Okay. On the bottom, I need to do the same thing. So I am going to use y as my common denominator. So I have 2ax over y plus 4 over 1 times y over y. So now I have 3xy plus 4x, and all of that is over 3y. That is divided by 2ax plus 4y, and all of that is over y. Now I can use keep it, change it, flip it. Okay? So when you have a fraction divided by a fraction, we do KFC. So we are going to keep the first fraction the same, 3xy plus 4x over 3y. We're going to change this from division to multiplication, and I'm going to flip this fraction. So now the y goes on top, and 2ax plus 4y goes on the bottom. So the only thing that I can see that I can cancel is the y, right? So I'm just going to keep it in red. So now the only thing in the numerator is 3xy plus 4x over, I have 3 in this denominator, and it's multiplied times this. So I'm going to put this in parentheses. 3 times everything here, 3 times 2, that's going to be 6ax. And 3 times 4 is 12. That's going to be 12y. This is going to be your answer. All right. And that is all we can do because this operation makes it to where we can't reduce. And that's all I have for this video. If you have any more questions, please keep asking. You've only got one more lesson to go, sweetheart, and then you're done with the lessons. Then all you have is that final exam, and it's online. I will see you on Thursday.